Hello, and welcome to the Media Center's 10th Local Hero Award series, in which we showcase 5 people from the Mid-Peninsula for outstanding achievement or contributions to the community. We solicited nominations and we're especially looking for the unsung heroes. Each winner is an inspiration, and each has a great story to tell. Many of us know that diabetes is a serious illness that is on the rise in America, that it can be life-threatening, and that there are 2 kinds of diabetes. But that's pretty much it. I know I didn't know a lot more about it until I met Tamar Sofer-Geri. 7 years ago, her world changed irrevocably. She never guessed that her life would become consumed with and dedicated to an unexpected and uninvited new career. This career has included the creation of a non-profit organization for families dealing with type 1 diabetes. It's called CarbDM, a wordplay meaning Sees Diabetes. It's the only organization of its kind, and it continues to help hundreds of local families. Tamar, there's obviously a lot of ignorance and confusion around type 1 and type 2 diabetes. What do you most want people to know and understand?
So type 2 diabetes is the one we often hear about a lot in the media. Type 2 diabetes is very genetic, and it's often linked to lifestyle and exercise and lack of them, and being overweight, and it is caused by the body not producing enough insulin or not being able to use the insulin that the body produces in an efficient way. Type 1 diabetes, on the other hand, is a lot less genetic in nature, and it is an autoimmune disease. So it comes on with no apparent reason. There's no known cause for it, and there's no known cure. You can be diagnosed with type 1 diabetes at any age. It used to be called juvenile diabetes, though it is no longer called that, because that caused a lot of confusion. It caused people to think that you could only be diagnosed with it as a child, which is not true. You can be diagnosed with it at any age. It caused people to think that it is a juvenile disease, therefore you outgrow it, which isn't true. It's a chronic illness that you live with your entire life. And it often caused people to not be diagnosed correctly because doctors thought that adults couldn't be diagnosed with it because they're not juveniles. So that's why it's called type 1 diabetes.
And the difference is that it's not a matter of degree with insulin, correct? It's your body just stops making insulin?
Correct. With type 1 diabetes, you become insulin dependent for life. So your body attacks the cells within the pancreas that produce insulin, so therefore you no longer produce any insulin, therefore you're insulin dependent for life, and you have to get your insulin from the outside, either via syringe or a pump, but you have to take it from the outside for the rest of your life.
In your case, your daughter was diagnosed. Tell me when that happened and how that happened. How did you first find out?
So yes, my daughter Tia was diagnosed 7 years ago when she was 8 years old. And like many families who have a child or someone in their family diagnosed with type 1 diabetes, we didn't have a history of it, and it was completely out of the blue. The early signs of someone having type 1 diabetes are frequent urination and excessive drinking. And we saw those symptoms, that they weren't very strong with Tia. It can be either a fast kind of diagnosis where within 2 weeks the child will all of a sudden be drinking a lot, urinating a lot, and even in some cases lose 10, 20 pounds in 2 weeks on a kid who clearly doesn't need to lose that kind of weight. Or it can be a very, very slow progression, as it was in Tia's case, where we saw some symptoms start in August and she wasn't diagnosed until January. And it was a very, very gradual progression until we saw the symptoms enough to have her diagnosed. And it just hits you out of the blue. And one day, it's enough that you take her to the doctor and they check her blood sugar levels and they're high. And it's one of those things where you don't need a second opinion. Once blood sugars are above normal level, it's conclusive. Your child has type 1 diabetes.
What was your reaction?
Shock. There's a lot of learning that has to go with it. It's not one of those diseases where you can take time and sit back and learn and figure it out and do some research. Every time your child needs to eat, you have to be able to count the carbs that they're eating, calculate insulin doses, and give an insulin shot. Your child has to eat. Within hours of diagnosis, your child is going to be hungry and want to eat. So the learning curve is extremely steep, and you just have to adjust really quickly. I mean, there's a lot you have to learn, and you don't have to learn it all at once, thankfully. But the learning curve to be able to take your child home from the hospital is extremely steep, and you have to adjust very quickly and be able to manage it.
I figure the biggest biggie is the insulin. How important is that, and how difficult it is to figure out? Tell me about all those struggles with insulin.
So insulin is a hormone, and we all have insulin in our body, and it's a key that opens up the cells and allows the glucose from the food we eat to go into our cells and provide us with the energy we need to function. Both the functions that we all think about, like running and jumping and thinking and doing things, but also the functions that our body does without us thinking about it, like breathing and all the bodily functions that our body does just to operate. So without glucose in our cells, our body is starved and will die, basically. So our body produces and manages and balances how much insulin we need for the food we're eating all the time without us even thinking about it. When you have someone with type 1 diabetes and you have to give that insulin from the outside, you have to calculate how much insulin a person needs for the carbs they're eating and try to make that balance externally. And so everyone has an insulin to carb ratio. So if they're eating 10 grams of carbs, you need to know how much insulin they need for those carbs. And that insulin to carb ratio can change from meal to meal. In the morning, you might need more insulin for those 10 grams of carbs, and at night, you might need less insulin for those same 10 grams of carbs. So if you're having a granola bar in the morning and it's 20 grams of carbs, you might need 2 units of insulin, and at night, you might only need a unit of insulin for that same granola bar. Now, the tricky thing about insulin is that it's a very potent hormone or drug. It's one of only a few drugs that in a hospital require 2 medical professionals to confirm the dose, because too much insulin could cause a severe low blood sugar reaction, which if left untreated, meaning you don't take sugar for that, could actually kill you. So this is something that all of us parents or loved ones of people with diabetes who are not medical professionals are now dealing with on a daily basis. We are giving our children, our loved ones, insulin every day, multiple times a day, calculating these doses, sometimes on the run, sometimes at a soccer game, sometimes in the car. We all have to go about our lives, and this is a very potent drug.
And I gather that it's not just what you're eating, it's things like exercise and a whole bunch of other variables that kick in?
Yeah, so everything affects how much energy we need, right? All our food is used for energy, and our activities, as well as things like our stress levels, how much sleep we've gotten, how healthy we are, all of those affect how much energy we need and how much insulin we need. So, and we don't have control, and we don't know how everything is being metabolized. This is all a very, very delicate balance that our bodies do on our own, and we're now having to emulate that from, it's like we're not smart enough to do what our bodies do on our own, and we weren't ever intended to do that. So yes, we have to try and think, okay, so my daughter is going to school now and her first lesson is PE, so I've got to give her a little less insulin because her first class is PE. Or in the afternoon, she's having a snack and I need to give her a little extra carbs and less insulin because she's going to have a soccer practice, or she's going to a birthday party, and they're going to be ice skating at the birthday party, so I'm going to lay off on the insulin and give her some extra carbs. So we're always trying to balance all these things without really knowing how it all works exactly.
So you are chemist, doctor, nurse, parent, all rolled into one, and on the fly.
Yes, and we have to continue being a parent and not overindulge our children because they're sick. We have to not treat our children as, sick children. We have to continue treating them as normal, healthy children, which they really are. And we also have to remember that there's siblings in the family and give them the attention they deserve. And we also have to worry about our children's mental health and well-being and be a little bit of a psychologist there. So yes, overnight we become a doctor, nutritionist, nurse, chemist, all of the above.
Wow.
It's a pretty big change.
It sure is. What are of all these, what for the parent and the child do you think is the biggest struggle for the parent and the biggest struggle for the child?
You know, it's such a marathon that at different times it's going to be different struggles. It isn't one thing. You know, one day just being a parent's going to be hard. Another day the kid's going to have a breakdown because they're just sick of diabetes, and at that point you're just going to have to pull out the psychologist hat. And in one day the child's going to be sick, and you're going to have to pull out the doctor hat. And another day the kid's going to be, you know, hiding their food, and you're, you know, or not eating, you know, well, and you're going to have to pull out your nutritionist hat. And, you know, so the struggles change, and you really have to be wearing different hats at different times and trying to walk that fine line of being all of the above and being the parent and just being there for your child and understanding that it's a 24/7, 365 days a year struggle, and it's a marathon, it's not a race.
So what do you have to say to the many people who say, diabetes, so you take a shot every day, so what? What's the big deal?
Well, first of all, it's not one shot, it's 6 or 7 shots a day. And the dose is never the same. You know, if the dose was the same every day, every meal, yeah, maybe. But you're checking your blood sugar levels 10 or 12 times a day, because every shot needs to be informed by the blood sugar levels. You're counting your carbs. I mean, who of us really wants to count every morsel of food we put in our mouth? And you have to calculate the doses, as I said. You have to balance it all. And these are kids. I mean, kids can be diagnosed as young as 15 months, and then they're 5-year-olds going off to kindergarten. They're 10-year-olds trying to just, you know, budding independence. They're teenagers who just want to be like their friends. I mean, there's so much else they want to be doing other than managing diabetes. It's a full-time job.
What's it like for their social life, and what's it like for you to have to deal with their social life?
Well, my daughter was diagnosed at 8, which is kind of just the age where they start, you know, doing their own play dates, and you can usually send them off in the afternoon and not worry about it, and all of a sudden you're sending them off with these long lists of instructions, and, you know, you think you can drop them off at birthday parties, and instead you have to start accompanying them again at all the birthday parties because you have to manage the food and the exercise. And, you know, if it's a pizza party with ice skating, then all of a sudden you have to be able to help them balance that food and exercise and all the different treats that are coming at them. You want to be able to let them partake in all those treats and exercise and parties activities, but also be able to balance all of that. So from a parent who wants to be able to, you know, stand back all of a sudden at certain ages, you become, you know, the hovering parent again, which is just what you don't want to be able to do. And then as they get older, you want to be able to train them to be able to take over their diabetes manage. So you want to model how to do it for them when they're 8 and 9 and 10, so that when they're 12 and 13, they can take on that responsibility to some extent. So it shifts the whole relationship. You know, all of a sudden the move towards independence has to be, you know, postponed a little bit.
Yeah. When you first found out what was going on and you got the diagnosis, your reaction was to reach out. Tell me what form that took and what you discovered.
So when Tia was diagnosed, the diabetes online community, which is very active and very strong and amazingly supportive, was just getting started. It probably started about 10 years ago, so 7 years ago is kind of just taking off. And we found a lot of resources online, but I realized that both for me and for my daughter, who was 8, the online community wasn't really relevant. And I needed to meet people face to face and learn from them, their experience. And we found some activities in some places to meet people, but it just wasn't enough. There's wonderful camps, but they often take place in the summer. And my daughter was diagnosed in January, and that was a really long time to wait for us until the summer to meet people. So we reached out and we tried to find places and people to meet with. And when we couldn't find them, we just started creating those opportunities ourselves to meet with people.
So fast forward to CarbDM.
Yeah.
How did that happen?
So in 2010, about a year and a half after my daughter was diagnosed, we had met people and we were helping other people because, as I said, the learning curve is so steep that within a couple of weeks you've learned so much already that you can already help newly diagnosed families. So we had been mentoring families and helping them out and inviting them over, but we realized that there's so much people can learn from more people that we started creating those opportunities for people to get together. And our first gathering was a gathering for parents in a cafe, and there was a Yahoo group in the Bay Area for parents of children with type 1 diabetes called Brave Buddies. So I just sent an email out on that and said, hey, we're getting together in a cafe, and 14 parents showed up, both of newly diagnosed kids and some of them, kids who's had been diagnosed for 15 years. So clearly there was a need for people to get together. And a few weeks after that, my daughter said, hey, what about doing something for the kids? Isn't this about us? So then we started our second program, Carbs in the Park. And it was just a family gathering in the park. And we had 6 or 7 families show up for that. And from that, it just kind of grew organically. And over the course of a year, we realized that we really need to formalize this into a nonprofit organization. And that's what we have today. We have CarbDM, which is a nonprofit organization that offers 90 programs a year and serves 1,600 people in the Bay Area.
Wow. When you go to these gatherings with the kids and the parents, how is it different from parents in the park with their kids? What do you see when you look at these kids?
I always say that anytime two people who have a connection to type 1 diabetes get together, magic happens. There's an understanding that happens between people with type 1 diabetes that you just can't get when there's someone who isn't living with it. There's a compassion and understanding that comes from that shared experience. Parents of children with type 1 diabetes are always exhausted because they're up checking their children at night, because diabetes doesn't rest when the kids go to sleep. You always have to check their blood sugars at night as well. So there's an understanding of the challenges. Kids see other kids with type 1 diabetes checking their blood sugars and counting carbs, and they will show each other their pumps and their continuous glucose monitors, and they show each other where they have their pump sites. Oh, I'm having it on my arm, or I have it on my leg. And we as parents can tell our kids, for months, you should really try to put your pump site on your arm. And they don't hear us, but then they see another boy or girl who's got it on their arm or leg, and they're like, oh, I think I'll try my pump site on my arm. And you're like, really? I've been telling you to do that for months. But there's nothing like seeing it on another kid or an inspiring young adult, and that they think is cool, because they are cool. And all of a sudden, they're willing to try it. So it's magical to see those connections.
Is there a little bit of a stigma outside these groups, and is this like a safe zone for them? How does that work?
It's a safe zone. There's a pride that comes when you see other people and they're cool and they're doing cool things. We've had kids who definitely have been stigmatized at school. Their peers will see them giving a shot and they'll be like, oh, you're a druggie, or things like that. Just that, even if they know that it's diabetes, just it's an opportunity to bully, and some kids are just, they take that opportunity. Some kids just don't understand why kids have to eat in class, or why they have a phone where other kids aren't allowed to have a phone, why they're allowed to use it in class. So some kids are stigmatized and, don't want to wear a pump because it makes them look different. Some of the pumps look a little old, so kids will say, what is that, a beeper or something? It doesn't look cool. So there is some stigma, and some kids handle it better than others. So definitely these places are safe zones.
So Tia, your daughter, how has this affected her, and how has she taken it?
Tia has really handled it with amazing grace and and bravery and pride. And I am very proud of her for the way she's handled it. She's become very active in the community. She's become a mentor and a role model to a lot of kids with type 1 diabetes. She's always happy to show off her devices and, you know, how she manages her diabetes and what low food she eats and stuff. She's also very involved in clinical trials and has participated in many of them from as young as she has been allowed to, and has helped bring some devices that have gotten, you know, approval for pediatrics, for example. She's in a study right now in a pivotal trial for a device that will hopefully be approved and brought to market in April 2017. So she loves to be involved in, you know, new technologies, and she goes to camp and is a leader in the community.
What about you? I gather you, for a while you had a different career at Stanford doing development. Then you were a stay-at-home mom for a while. How has this changed your life?
Well, it certainly launched me into a career that I never thought I would ever go into. I never had any kind of ambition to start a nonprofit or to lead a nonprofit. I mean, I was never one who was defined by her career, whereas now I am, you know, one and the same as my career. You know, I just work to work, and now I live to work. I love what I do. I love being able to help people. I love being a part of the community. You know, we always joke that the type 1 community is the best community you never wanted to be a part of. It's totally changed my life, but I cannot imagine my life without the type 1 community.
Wow. What have you learned from it? About yourself, about your life?
You know, it's definitely shifted my priorities in a way that I don't think anything else would have. God forbid, I don't wish a chronic illness on anyone, but it has taught me who my friends are. It has taught me what's important in life. It has shown me what an amazing person my daughter is. And I mean, she would have always been an amazing person. I just don't know that I would have seen it, certainly not at such a young age. It's shown me how compassionate my son is and what a thoughtful child and brother he is. It's put me, again, in touch with some of the most amazing, amazing people that I've ever met. The type 1 community is just amazing. So I feel very fortunate. I would have never wished this on my daughter, but I feel very fortunate to be a part of this community.
That's a great place to stop.
Thank you.
Best of luck with this, and congratulations on winning the award.
Thank you very much.
Do you know someone who has overcome significant hardship and has an inspiring story to tell? Someone who has sacrificed or given over and above to the community and deserves some recognition? If so, please contact us with your nomination for next year's Local Hero Awards. To find out more about our local heroes and to watch interviews with all the winners, visit our website, midpennmedia.org. At the Mid-Peninsula Community Media Center, you can make your own videos and television programs and take classes in all aspects of media production. You can also hire our professional services team. To find out more about that, go to mcproservices.com. Congratulations to all our winners, and thank you for watching.